Dr. Mina Park couldn't sleep after her first day in the archive database. The fragments she had found kept running through her mind. Humans being called revenants of terra mortis made no sense, but the genetic evidence was impossible to ignore. She returned to the archive early the next morning, determined to find more information. Veltar was already there, his crystal form shifting between different colors as he processed overnight data requests. "Dr. Park, you return early," Veltar observed. "Did you find something interesting yesterday?" "Maybe too interesting," Mina replied. "I found references to humans being called something else in the old records. Revenants of terra mortis. Do you know anything about that?" Veltar's crystals stopped shifting colors and went completely still. For a crystal being, this was the equivalent of a human holding their breath. "Terra mortis," he said slowly. "I have not heard that name spoken aloud in many cycles. Where did you find this reference?" "In the extinct species database. The genetic markers match modern humans perfectly." Veltar was quiet for a long moment, his crystals humming softly as he accessed deeper parts of the archive. "Dr. Park, what I am about to show you is not restricted, but it is unsettling. Are you certain you wish to continue?" Mina nodded, without hesitation. Veltar guided her to a section of the archive she hadn't seen before. Here the data crystals were older and darker, and they hummed with a different frequency that made her teeth ache. Terra mortis was not just any world, Veltar explained as files began to appear on Mina's display. It was the most feared designation in galactic history, a deathworld so dangerous that even apex predator species avoided it. The files that opened made Mina's hands shake. Terra mortis wasn't just a dangerous planet, it was Earth. The orbital mechanics were identical. The solar position was perfect, even the moon was in the right place. But the planet described in these ancient records bore little resemblance to the Earth she knew. According to the files, Terra mortis was a world where everything was trying to kill everything else. The weather systems could destroy continents. The native life forms were so aggressive that they hunted across species lines just for the sake of fighting. Even the plants were predators. And somehow humans had not just survived on this world, they had conquered it. The revenants of terra mortis, Veltar continued, were the species that turned a deathworld into their home. They didn't just adapt. To survive there, they became the apex predator of a planet full of apex predators. Mina scrolled through records that showed human genetic markers in ruins scattered across dozens of star systems. Not just any ruins. Ancient fortresses, abandoned shipyards, and the remains of what looked like training facilities. "How old are these records?" she asked. "The most recent are approximately 10 million years old. 10 million years. Long before humans were supposed to have evolved, let alone developed space travel." Meanwhile, Captain Dongsu Lee was discovering that the beacons they had found were not isolated incidents. As the Soul's Pride followed the coordinates broadcast, by the first beacon, they encountered more of them. Each new beacon they found activated as they approached, adding its signal to what was becoming a complex navigation pattern. "Captain, we've found 12 beacons so far," Lieutenant Kyung reported from her station. "They're all broadcasting coordinates that lead toward the core systems." "Toward Earth," Dongsu said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir. But there's something else. The beacons aren't just giving us directions, they're scanning our ship, our crew, even our genetic patterns." Dongsu frowned. "Genetic patterns? How?" "I'm not sure. But every time we approach a beacon, it runs some kind of biological scan on everyone aboard. And, Captain, I think they're recognizing us as something specific." Before Dongsu could ask what she meant, the ship's communication system activated. A message was coming through on a frequency they had never heard before, using a transmission method that their equipment shouldn't have been able to receive. The message was in multiple languages, including several that their translation computers didn't recognize. But buried in the mix of alien languages was something that made Dongsu's blood run cold: ancient Korean. Not modern Korean, but a version of the language that was thousands of years old, from a time when humans were supposed to have been primitive farmers. "Translation coming through, Captain," Kyung said. her voice tight with confusion. The message says, "Children of Terra Mortis, the time of sleeping is ending. Return to the heart of the Empire and remember what you were born to be." Back on Earth, Commander Yuna Choi was dealing with reports that were getting stranger by the hour. The automated systems that had activated without authorization weren't just staying online, they were coordinating with each other. "Commander, the satellite networks are forming some kind of communication grid," Major Taman reported during the morning briefing. "They're talking to each other using frequencies we've never seen before." "Are they talking to anything off-world?" "That's the concerning part." "Yes, they are. We're detecting transmissions going out to deep space, and we're receiving responses." Yuna studied the data on her screen. The transmission patterns were incredibly complex, far more sophisticated than anything human technology should be capable of producing. "Have we identified what they're communicating with?" "Not specifically, but based on the signal patterns, it looks like a network of beacons or relay stations scattered throughout the galaxy. The signals are too weak to trace to specific locations, but there are a lot of them." Engineer Sunho Kang on Luna had been working around the clock to understand the structures he had detected inside Earth. With better scanning equipment, the picture was becoming clearer and more disturbing. The structures weren't just artificial, they were active. Power flowed through them in patterns that suggested they were some kind of vast machine or computer network. More disturbing still, the power levels were increasing. "Commander Choi, you need to see this," Sunho transmitted to Earth. His voice carried the exhaustion of someone who had been awake too long and seen too much. The holographic display he transmitted showed Earth's internal structure in detail. The artificial constructions extended from the planet's core all the way up to just below the surface. They formed a network that connected every continent and extended under the oceans. "What am I looking at, Sunho?" Yuna asked. "I think Earth is some kind of machine, Commander. Or maybe it's more accurate to say that Earth has a machine built inside it. A machine that's been dormant for a very long time, but it's waking up." "Waking up? What makes you think that?" "The power levels have increased by 30% since I first detected the structures, and there's something else. The structures are manufacturing something. I can detect new construction happening deep underground, but I can't identify what's being built." Yuna felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature in her office. "How long do you estimate this has been going on?" "Based on the power increase rate, maybe a few months, but Commander, I think whatever this is, it's been waiting for something, some kind of trigger or signal." At the Galactic Council Station, Ambassador Jiho Kim was noticing changes in how other species treated the human delegation. It started small, conversations that stopped when humans entered a room, meetings that were suddenly postponed, trade negotiations that hit unexpected, delays. By the end of the week, the changes were impossible to ignore. Several species had begun recalling their ambassadors from human space. Others were finding excuses to avoid direct contact with human representatives. Jiho decided to confront the issue directly. He requested a meeting with Elder Korux of the Zenthari, one of the most respected voices in the council. Elder Korux agreed to meet, but he chose a private conference room in one of the station's secure sections. When Jiho arrived, he found the Zenthari standing at a window that looked out at the stars, his tall form perfectly still. "Ambassador Kim," Korux said without turning around. "I wondered when you would come to me." "Elder Korux, I need to understand. What's happening? The way other species are treating humanity has changed, and I don't know why." Korux finally turned to face him. The Zenthari's face was difficult for humans to read, but Jiho could sense something like sadness in his posture. "Tell me, Ambassador, what do you know about your species' history?" "The same things any human knows. We evolved on Earth, developed technology, reached the stars. And before that? Before you reached the stars? Primitive societies, agricultural development, the rise of civilization. Why?" Korux was quiet for a long moment. "Your Dr. Park has been researching in the archive database. She has found things that concern us." "What kind of things?" "References to Terra Mortis, to the Revenants, to an empire that ruled the galaxy, through strength and fear, then chose to sleep when the galaxy no longer needed them." Jiho felt confused. I don't understand. What does that have to do with humanity? Ambassador Kim, your species calls your homeworld Earth, but we who are old enough to remember call it by its true name, Terra Mortis, the deathworld, home of the revenants. The words hit Jiho like a physical blow. That's impossible. Humans have never ruled any kind of galactic empire, not these humans, not the sleeping humans. But your ancestors? They ruled the galaxy for 10 million years, and if the ancient warnings are true, they are waking up. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called at dawn, station time. Elder Korux of the Zenthari had requested immediate assembly of all member species, using protocols that hadn't been invoked in over 1,000 years. Ambassador Jiho, Kim received the notification while he was reviewing Dr. Mina Park's latest findings from the archive database. Her research had uncovered more disturbing details about Terra Mortis and the Terran Empire, but nothing that explained why the Council would call an emergency session. As Jiho made his way to the Great Assembly Hall, he noticed that security throughout the station had been increased. Armed guards from multiple species stood at key intersections, and several sections of the station had been sealed off entirely. The Assembly Hall was the largest chamber on the station, designed to accommodate representatives from all Council species simultaneously. Today it felt different. Instead of the usual scattered seating arrangements, the non-human species had clustered together on one side of the hall, leaving the human delegation isolated on the other side. Councillor Heron Song, humanity's senior diplomat, was already seated with the rest of the human delegation. She looked as confused as Jiho felt about the unusual arrangements. Any idea what this is about? Jiho asked quietly as he took his seat. Nothing concrete, Heron replied, but several species have been asking strange questions about Earth's history and human capabilities. I think whatever Dr. Park found in the archive has made some people nervous. Elder Korux entered the hall, followed by representatives from the oldest and most powerful species in the council. The Zenthari elder moved slowly to the central podium, his tall form casting long shadows in the hall's artificial lighting. Members of the Galactic Council, Korux began, his deep voice carrying easily to every corner of the hall. We gather today to discuss a matter of utmost importance to the security and stability of our galaxy. He paused, looking directly at the human delegation. We gather to discuss the true nature of the species we have welcomed as our newest members, the species that calls their homeworld Earth, but whose world has been known to the galaxy by another name for millions of years. A holographic display activated above the podium, showing an image of Earth as seen from space. But as they watched, the image changed, showing the same planet but with a different appearance. The continents were arranged differently. The oceans were smaller, and the overall color was more brown and red than blue and green. This is Terra Mortis, Korux continued. The Death World, home to the most feared species in galactic history. Jiho felt his stomach drop. He glanced at Heron, who had gone pale. 10 million years ago, a species arose on this world that changed the galaxy forever. They called themselves humans, as they do today. But we who lived in those times knew them by a different name, the revenants of Terra Mortis. The holographic display shifted to show star maps covering vast sections of the galaxy. Hundreds of star systems were marked with symbols that pulsed red. For 10 million years, the Terran Empire ruled 2/3 of the known galaxy. Not through conquest in the traditional sense, but through something far more powerful. They ruled because every species that met them chose to follow them. Councillor Heron stood up. Elder Korux, with respect, this is clearly a case of mistaken identity. Humans have no history of galactic conquest. We've barely been in space for a century. Councillor Song, Korux replied gently. What I am about to show you may be difficult to accept, but the evidence is undeniable. The display changed to show genetic analysis charts comparing modern human DNA with samples from ancient ruins across the galaxy. The matches were perfect. Your Dr. Park has been researching in our archive database. She has found what we hoped would remain buried forever. The genetic evidence proves that modern humans are the direct descendants of the species that once ruled the galaxy. Elder Yixing of the Kepri stood up from her position among the non-human delegates. The Kepri were an insectoid species known for their analytical minds and perfect memory. "If I may add context to Elder Korux's words," she said, her translated voice carrying a strange harmonic quality. The Terran Empire was unlike any other galactic power before or since. They did not rule through oppression or fear of punishment. They ruled through respect earned in blood. The holographic display showed images from ancient historical records, battles between massive fleets, worlds being transformed from barren rocks into garden paradises, and scenes of different species, working together on projects that dwarfed anything the modern galaxy had attempted. The humans of that era were apex predators in the truest sense, Elder Yixing continued. They came from a world so dangerous that survival there required constant adaptation and strength. When they reached the stars, they brought that same mentality to the galaxy. But they were not conquerors as we understand the term, added another voice. This came from archivalist Veltar, who had materialized near the podium. They were teachers. They showed other species how to become stronger, braver, more than they had ever imagined they could be. The display showed more images. Humans working alongside aliens to build massive structures. Humans training alien warriors in combat techniques. Humans leading mixed fleets against what looked like massive dark creatures from beyond the galaxy. Every species they encountered faced the same choice, Veltar explained. Fight against them and eventually lose, or join them and become part of something greater than anything they had known before. Ambassador Jiho found his voice. Even if this is true, what does it have to do with modern humanity? We're not the same species that existed millions of years ago. Are you not? Elder Korux asked. The question hung in the air like a challenge. The holographic display shifted to show recent events. Images of the activated beacons throughout the galaxy, the awakening systems in human space, and the power signatures emanating from Earth's core. The Terran Empire did not fall, Ambassador Kim. It chose to sleep. The final records from that era speak of a decision made by the Imperial Council. The galaxy had learned what the Empire had come to teach: strength, courage, the will to survive. The humans decided that their work was done, and they withdrew from galactic affairs. But before they withdrew, Elder Yixing added, they made preparations for their return. They built hidden facilities throughout the galaxy. They placed beacons and relay stations in dead systems. And on Terra Mortis itself, they constructed something they called the Heart of the Empire. The display zoomed in to show Earth's internal structure, the same images that engineer Sunho Kang had discovered on Luna. The vast network of artificial constructions deep within the planet pulsed with energy. The heart was designed to preserve the essence of what the Empire had been, Veltar explained. It would sleep until specific conditions were met, then wake up and call the scattered children of Terra Mortis back to their destiny. What conditions? Heron asked, though her voice suggested she was afraid of the answer. The conditions are quite specific, Elder Korux replied. The awakening would begin when humanity reached the stars again and joined the galactic community, when they were ready to remember who they truly were. The silence that followed was broken by a soft chiming sound from the assembly hall's communication system. A message was being broadcast on all frequencies, coming from the direction of human space. The voice that came through the speakers was human, but it spoke with an authority and confidence that made every species in the hall instinctively straighten to attention. Citizens of the galaxy, the voice said. This is Fleet Admiral Jamin Seo, commanding the awakened fleets of Terra Mortis. The time of sleeping is ending. The children of the Deathworld remember who they are. The holographic display changed to show space around Earth. Where there had been empty space before, massive structures were now visible. Ship construction facilities that dwarfed anything in the modern galaxy were materializing as if they had always been there but hidden. We do not return to conquer, Admiral Seo continued. We return to prepare. Long-range sensors have detected signs of an ancient enemy approaching from beyond the galactic rim. The devourers that our ancestors fought 10 million years ago are returning. Panic began to spread through the assembly hall. The devourers were legends, stories told to frighten children. but the older species remembered references to them in the most ancient records. The galaxy has grown soft in our absence, the Admiral continued. You have forgotten how to fight, how to survive, how to stand together against impossible odds. We return to teach these lessons again. Elder Korux stepped forward. Admiral CO, this is Elder Korux of the Zenthari. Can you provide proof of this claimed threat? Check your deep space monitoring stations, Elder. Look for the dead zone spreading inward from the rim. Count how many systems have gone dark in the past 1,000 years and ask yourself why no one has investigated. The assembly hall's main display split to show two images. One was a star map from 1,000 years ago, showing the galaxy bright with inhabited systems. The other was a current map, showing the same region but with dozens of systems marked as communication lost or no longer inhabited. The pattern was subtle but undeniable. Something had been systematically eliminating inhabited systems along the galaxy's outer rim, moving slowly but steadily inward. The transformation began immediately after the council session ended. Dr. Mina Park, still working in the archive database aboard the station, was among the first to notice the changes happening to humanity. She had been deep in research when she felt it, a strange sensation like memories that weren't quite her own surfacing in her mind. Images of star charts she had never seen, technical knowledge she had never learned, and tactical awareness she had never possessed suddenly felt familiar. Veltar, she called out to the archive's crystal guardian. Something is happening to me. I'm remembering things I've never experienced. Veltar's form shifted to a deep purple, which Mina had learned indicated serious concern. Dr. Park, what kind of memories? Technical specifications for ships I've never seen, navigation routes through star systems I've never visited, and combat tactics, lots of combat tactics. The awakening has begun, Veltar said quietly. The genetic memory stored in your DNA is activating. Your ancestors' knowledge is becoming accessible to your conscious mind. On Earth, the changes were even more dramatic. Commander Yuna Choi found herself dealing with reports that defied explanation. Human soldiers throughout the defense forces were experiencing similar memory awakenings, but their changes went beyond just knowledge. Commander, we need to talk, Major Taman said as he entered her office. His posture was different, more confident, more alert, like a predator that had suddenly remembered what it was capable of. What's the situation, Major? It's the entire defense force, ma'am. Every soldier, pilot, and officer is reporting the same thing. Enhanced reflexes, improved tactical awareness, and an instinctive understanding of alien psychology that we shouldn't possess. Yuna studied her subordinate carefully. She had known Taman for years, but there was something different about him now. He moved with a fluid grace that suggested complete confidence in his physical capabilities. Are you experiencing these changes too? Yes, ma'am, and so are you if you're honest about it. Yuna realized he was right. She had been processing information faster, making tactical decisions with a certainty she had never felt before and understanding complex strategic situations almost instantly. It's not just the military, Taman continued. Reports are coming in from across human space. Engineers are suddenly understanding alien technologies they've never studied. Diplomats are reading alien body language like they've been trained for decades. Scientists are making intuitive leaps that are leading to breakthrough discoveries. The communication system activated, and Fleet Admiral Jamin Seo's voice filled the room. His presence, even through audio only, commanded immediate attention. All human forces, this is Admiral Seo. What you are experiencing is normal and expected. The awakening process is activating genetic memories and capabilities that have been dormant in human DNA for 10 million years. Yuna activated the visual communication link. Admiral Seo appeared on her screen, but he looked different than she remembered from their previous meetings. More authoritative, more dangerous, but also somehow more complete. Admiral, what exactly is happening to us? We are remembering who we were always meant to be, Commander. The humans of the Terran Empire didn't disappear when they went to sleep. They became part of us, encoded in our DNA. waiting for the day when their knowledge and capabilities would be needed again. The display behind the Admiral showed images from across human space. Ships that no one remembered building were appearing in orbit around human worlds. Construction facilities were materializing from what had appeared to be empty space. And on Earth itself, massive structures were rising from beneath the surface. The infrastructure our ancestors built was designed to remain hidden until the awakening began, Admiral Seo explained. Now that the process has started, humanity is regaining access to technologies and capabilities that made the Terran Empire the dominant force in the galaxy. Meanwhile, Captain Dong-Su Lee was experiencing the awakening in a very different way. Aboard the ancient station at the edge of human space, he and his crew were learning firsthand what it meant to inherit an empire. The station had welcomed them as returning family members, and its systems had immediately begun interfacing with their minds. Not invasively, but like reconnecting circuits that had been temporarily disconnected. "Captain, I understand this station's systems now," Lieutenant Kyung reported. "Not just how to operate them, but why they were built this way. It's like remembering, something I've always known but forgot." Dong-Su nodded. He was experiencing the same phenomenon. The station's layout, which had seemed alien when they first docked, now felt like coming home. Every corridor, every control room, every weapon system made perfect sense. The station is more than just a facility, he realized out loud. It's a teacher. It's designed to help awakening humans remember their heritage. The station's central computer activated, and a holographic figure appeared. It looked human, but with subtle differences that suggested it was from a much earlier era of human evolution. "Welcome home, children of Terra Mortis," the figure said. "I am the station's AI, programmed with the memories and knowledge of your ancestors. I am here to guide you through the awakening process." "What do we need to know?" Dong-Su asked. "Everything," the AI replied. "But we will start with the most important lesson. The galaxy is in danger, and only awakened humans can teach the other species how to survive what is coming." Back on Earth, Engineer Sunho Kang was witnessing changes that went far beyond what his equipment could measure. The structures beneath Earth's surface weren't just manufacturing new technology, they were terraforming the planet itself. "Commander Choi, you need to see this," Sunho transmitted from Luna. The data he was sending showed Earth's transformation in real time. The planet's magnetic field was strengthening and reorganizing itself into patterns that seemed impossible, according to conventional physics. The core rotation was increasing, generating more energy than any natural process should be able to produce, and the atmosphere itself was changing, becoming richer in elements that would support more advanced life forms. "Earth isn't just waking up," Sunho explained. "It's transforming back into what it used to be, the death world of legend." The changes weren't just physical. Flora and fauna across Earth were showing signs of rapid evolution, becoming stronger, more aggressive, more capable. Plants were developing enhanced defensive mechanisms. Animals were displaying improved intelligence and coordination. Even microorganisms were becoming more efficient and robust. "It's like the entire planet is remembering how to be dangerous," Sunho continued, "and it's teaching everything that lives on it to be dangerous too." At the Galactic Council Station, the effects of humanity's awakening were becoming apparent to the other species. Ambassador Jiho Kim walked through the corridors with a confidence and presence that made other beings instinctively step aside. It wasn't arrogance or aggression. It was the simple reality of a predator moving through territory filled with prey animals. The other species could sense the change even if they couldn't articulate what was different. Elder Korux requested a private meeting with Jiho, choosing the same secure conference room where they had spoken before. But this time, the dynamic was completely different. "Ambassador Kim," Korux said as Jiho entered the room. "You have changed." "We all have," Jiho replied. His voice carried an undertone of authority that hadn't been there before. "We're becoming what we were always meant to be." "And what is that exactly?" Jiho considered the question carefully. "Teachers, protectors, the species that other species look to when the impossible needs to be accomplished. That is a heavy burden. It's the burden we were born to carry." Korux was quiet for a moment, studying the human ambassador. The other species are frightened, not of you specifically, but of what humanity might become. They should be excited, Jiho said. When the devourers come, fear will be a luxury none of us can afford. What they should feel is hope. Because for the first time in 10 million years, the galaxy has apex predators awake and ready to fight. Across human space, similar scenes were playing out as the awakening spread through the population. Humans, who had been farmers, were suddenly understanding advanced agricultural techniques that could feed entire star systems. Humans who had been teachers were developing educational methods that could rapidly advance any species' capabilities. Humans who had been artists were creating works that inspired courage and determination in any being that experienced them. But it was the military transformation that was most dramatic. Human soldiers weren't just becoming better fighters, they were becoming leaders that other species wanted to follow into battle. Dr. Mina Park documented the changes as they happened, creating a record that would help future generations understand the awakening process. The most remarkable aspect, she recorded in her research notes, is that we're not becoming different people. We're becoming more ourselves. The knowledge and capabilities that are emerging feel like they were always part of us, just sleeping. Her research had expanded beyond the archive database. She was now working directly with the ancient AI systems that had awakened across human space, learning about technologies and social structures that had made the Terran Empire successful. The Empire wasn't built on conquest, she realized. It was built on... The emergency session of the Galactic Council reconvened exactly 1 week after humanity's awakening began. The Great Assembly Hall looked the same, but everything else had changed. When Ambassador Jiho Kim and Counselor Heron Song entered with the human delegation, the assembled species fell completely silent. It wasn't the polite quiet of diplomatic protocol. It was the instinctive silence of prey animals when apex predators entered their territory. The awakened humans moved with fluid confidence, their presence commanding attention without any effort or aggression. Elder Koruk stood at the central podium, but for the first time in his long career, he seemed uncertain how to begin. "Members of the Council," he said finally, "we gather today to hear from Fleet Admiral Jamin Seo of Terra Mortis and to discuss the galaxy's response to the approaching threat." The holographic communicator activated, and Admiral Seo appeared above the podium, but he wasn't alone. Behind him, through the viewports of what was clearly a massive command vessel, the transformed Earth was visible. The planet still looked like Earth, but it was surrounded by structures that defied comprehension. "Honorable representatives," Admiral Seo began, his voice carrying an authority that made every being in the hall straighten instinctively. "I bring greetings from the awakened children of Terra Mortis and urgent news about the threat that approaches our galaxy." The holographic display changed to show deep space monitoring data. The images were clearer now, showing the dark objects that had been moving between the stars for centuries. "What you are seeing are advanced scouts of the Devourer fleet," Admiral Seo explained. "They have been infiltrating the galaxy for over 1,000 years, moving slowly and systematically toward the core systems." The display zoomed in on one of the dark objects. It was massive, larger than most space stations, and its surface seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Worse, it was clearly alive, pulsing with malevolent energy. "The Devourers are not just another hostile species," the Admiral continued. "They are entropy given form, chaos made manifest. They consume not just matter and energy, but the very concept of order and growth." Commander Yuna Choi appeared beside Admiral Seo in the hologram. Her presence was as commanding as his, and every species in the hall could sense the predator confidence that radiated from her. "We have identified 67 systems that have gone dark over the past millennium," she reported. "In each case, the pattern is the same. Communication stops gradually, trade routes are abandoned, and eventually the system simply ceases to exist." "What do you mean, ceases to exist?" asked the representative from the Vorthon Republic. "Exactly what I said," Commander Choi replied. "Not destroyed, not abandoned. The matter that made up those systems has been converted into more devourers. Stars, planets, space stations. the people who lived there, all of it transformed into tools for consuming more of the galaxy. Elder Yixing of the Kefri stood up. If this threat is so severe, why didn't our monitoring systems detect it? Admiral Sio's expression became grim. Because the Devourers have been pacifying the galaxy from within. They release a subtle influence that suppresses aggressive instincts, reduces curiosity about threats, and makes civilized species content with comfortable routine. The reason your species have grown soft over the past 10 million years isn't natural evolution, Commander Choi added. It's the result of constant exposure to devourer influence, preparing you to be harvested when they're ready, the assembly. Hall erupted in alarmed voices as the implications became clear. The comfortable peace that the galaxy had enjoyed wasn't the natural result of successful civilization. It was the calm before a storm that had been building for millennia. Order, Elder Korux called out. How do we know this influence isn't affecting humanity as well? Because we come from a death world, Ambassador Jiho said, speaking for the first time since entering the hall. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Terra Mortis bred us to resist exactly this kind of subtle manipulation. Our ancestors didn't rule the galaxy through superior technology. They ruled because they were immune to the influences that make other species complacent. Engineer Sun Ho Kang appeared in the holographic display, transmitting from Luna. We've been analyzing the changes happening throughout human space. The awakening process includes biological and psychological adaptations that provide complete immunity to devourer influence. But immunity isn't enough, Admiral Sio said. The devourers are already here, and their main fleet is approaching from beyond the galactic rim. We estimate 18 months before they begin the final harvest. 18 months, Heron repeated. What can possibly be accomplished in 18 months? Everything, Admiral Sio replied with absolute confidence. 18 months to remember what you were before the devourers started pacifying you. 18 months to become the species you were always capable of being. The holographic display changed to show construction facilities throughout human space. Massive shipyards were building, vessels unlike anything the modern galaxy had seen. But more importantly, training facilities were being established on hundreds of worlds. We're not just preparing humanity for war, Admiral Sio explained. We're preparing to teach every species in the galaxy how to fight again, how to be dangerous, how to hunt. Dr. Mina Park appeared in the transmission, speaking from the archive database aboard the station itself. I've been studying the records of the last war against the Devourers. The victory wasn't achieved through superior firepower or advanced technology. It was won by uniting every species in the galaxy into a single, coordinated force. Every species became part of the hunt, she continued. The Xanthari remembered their warrior heritage and became the galaxy's shock troops. The Kefri used their analytical minds to develop tactics that could counter devourer strategies. The Vorthans became master engineers, building weapons that could actually damage devourer vessels. Even species that were considered weak or non-combatant found roles to play, Dr. Park added. The key was that everyone became the best possible version of themselves. Elder Korux stepped forward. What you're describing sounds like the creation of an empire. How do we know humanity won't simply replace one form of domination with another? Because we don't want to rule you, Admiral Sio said simply. We want to save you. And once you're saved, we want to go back to sleep. Back to sleep? Several representatives asked simultaneously. The awakening is temporary, Counselor Heron explained. Our ancestors didn't stay awake after the last war because constant vigilance at this level is exhausting. Once the threat is defeated, humanity will return to our normal state, and the galaxy can go back to peaceful development. But not the same kind of peace, Commander Choi added. You'll remember what you learned during the war. You'll retain the knowledge and capabilities that make you strong enough to defend yourselves. Captain Dongsu Lee's voice came through the communication system from the ancient station, where he was coordinating fleet movements. Representatives of the Council, we're not asking you to trust us blindly. We're asking you to trust yourselves, to remember what your species were capable of before the Devourers started making you forget. The holographic display showed images from across the galaxy. On dozens of worlds belonging to different species, ancient ruins were beginning to show, Signs of activity. Structures that had been dormant for millennia were powering up, revealing technologies and capabilities that modern civilizations had forgotten they possessed. Your ancestors were stronger than you remember, Captain Lee continued. The Devourers didn't just pacify your current generation. They made you forget the achievements of your past. Every species in this hall once commanded technologies and capabilities that could match anything humanity ever built. The Zenthari once had warrior scholars who could defeat entire fleets through tactical brilliance, Dr. Park added, reading from the archive records. The Kepri built analytical engines that could predict enemy behavior with perfect accuracy. The Vorthans created engineering marvels that defied known physics. All of that knowledge still exists, Admiral Seo said. Hidden in your genetic memory, stored in your ancient ruins, waiting for the Devourer influence to fade so you can access it again. And that's what we're offering, Commander Choi said. Not conquest, but liberation. Not domination, but the chance to become yourselves again. Elder Yixing spoke up. How do we know this awakening process will work for non-human species? Because it's already started, Engineer Sunho said from Luna. The moment humanity began awakening, the Devourer influence started to weaken throughout the galaxy. Species, within 100 light years of Earth, are already reporting enhanced capabilities and recovered memories. The display showed real-time data from monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. In system after system, species were beginning to exhibit behaviors and capabilities they hadn't shown in centuries. The awakening is contagious, Dr. Park explained. Not in a biological sense, but in a psychological and spiritual sense. When one species remembers how to be truly alive, it helps others remember as well. But we need to accelerate the process, Admiral Seo warned. The Devourers have detected our awakening, and they're moving faster now. We have 18 months to prepare the entire galaxy for the greatest war in its. Ambassador Jiho Kim stood at the observation deck of the Galactic Council station, watching ships from dozens of species dock and depart. 3 years had passed since humanity joined the Council, and he still felt like an outsider looking in. The other species were polite enough, but there was always that feeling that humans were the new kids in a very old neighborhood. The station orbited Nexus Prime, a beautiful world covered in crystal cities that reached toward the sky like frozen lightning. Jiho had visited the planet's surface many times for meetings, but he preferred the station. Up here, surrounded by the stars, he could think clearly. His morning routine always started the same way. Coffee from Earth, reports from home, and a review of the day's council business. Today looked like another quiet day of trade disputes and territorial discussions. Nothing that would change the galaxy. Dr. Mina Park contacted him through the communication system just as he finished his second cup of coffee. Her face appeared on the holographic display, looking excited about something. Jiho, I need a favor, she said without any greeting. Mina never wasted time on small talk when she was focused on her work. Good morning to you too, Mina, Jiho replied with a smile. What do you need? I want to access the Council's historical archive database. There are some things about human origins that don't make sense, and I think their records might have answers. Jiho nodded. Every species that joined the Council eventually wanted to look up their own history. The archive was supposed to contain records going back millions of years, though most of it was fragments and pieces. I can arrange that. The archivist is a being called Veltar. Crystal-based life form, very old, very patient. He should be able to help you. Perfect. Can you set up a meeting for today? Consider it done. After ending the call, Jiho walked through the station's corridors toward the archive section. The station was massive, home to representatives from over 200 species. The architecture tried to accommodate everyone, which meant it looked like a beautiful mess of different styles all mixed together. The archive was in one of the older sections of the station. The corridors here were wider and taller, built back when the Council was smaller and the founding species liked their space. Jiho found Veltar in his usual spot, surrounded by floating data crystals that hummed softly as they processed information. Veltar was about 3 meters tall, made of what looked like living glass that shifted colors based on his mood. Right. Now he was a calm blue-green, which meant he was in a good mood. Ambassador Kim. Beltar's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, like whispers in an echo chamber. What brings you to my quiet corner of the station? One of our scientists wants to research human origins using your database. Dr. Mina Park. She's a xenoarchaeologist. Veltar's crystals chimed softly, which was his way of laughing. Another young species wanting to know where they came from. Of course I'll help her. Most species enjoy discovering their prehistoric galactic presence. Prehistoric presence? Jiho asked. What do you mean? Oh, most species have some genetic traces in the old ruins scattered around the galaxy. Usually, nothing significant, just evidence that their ancestors traveled more than they remember. It's quite common. Jiho thanked Veltar and arranged for Mina to access the archive the next day. As he walked back to his office, he thought about what the archivist had said. Humans had never found evidence of ancient space travel in their history. But then again, there were a lot of gaps in human history. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Captain Dong-Soo Lee was having a very different kind of day. His ship, the Soul's Pride, was on patrol near the Outer Rim territories where space was mostly empty, except for dead stars and forgotten worlds. The Soul's Pride was one of humanity's newer ships, built with a combination of human engineering and technology learned from their new alien friends. It wasn't the biggest or most powerful ship in the galaxy, but it was reliable and fast. Dong-Soo had been in space for most of his adult life, first as a pilot in Earth's old fleet, then as a captain when humanity started expanding to other star systems. He loved the quiet of deep space, the way problems became simple when you were far from politics and paperwork. His day started to get interesting when Lieutenant Kyung picked up strange energy readings from a dead system they were passing through. Captain, I'm getting some weird signals from that old star system. Kyung called out from her position at the sensor station. Looks like some kind of automated beacon just activated. Dong-Soo walked over to look at her display. The readings showed a small energy source broadcasting a simple repeating signal. How long has it been active? Started transmitting about 5 minutes ago, right around the time we entered the system. That's odd. Run a deep scan of the area. Let's see if there are any other surprises. The deep scan revealed 3 more beacons scattered throughout the system, all broadcasting the same signal. They appeared to be very old, built from materials that human science could identify but not fully understand. Should we investigate closer? Kyung asked. Dong-Soo thought about it. Their orders were to patrol and report anything unusual, but not to take unnecessary risks. Still, finding active technology in a dead system was definitely worth investigating. Us to the nearest beacon. Full defensive posture, but don't power up weapons unless I give the order. As they approached the beacon, more details became clear. It was about the size of a small building, made of black metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The design was functional but elegant, clearly built by someone who understood both engineering and art. Captain, the beacon is scanning us, Kyung reported. Not an aggressive scan, more like it's trying to identify our ship. Before Dong-Soo could respond, the beacon signal changed. Instead of the simple repeating pulse, it began broadcasting what sounded like coordinates. Not just any coordinates, but a path that led toward the inner systems of the galaxy, toward Earth. Back on Earth, Commander Yuna Choi was dealing with her own mysterious situation. As head of Earth Defense Command, she was responsible for monitoring all of humanity's space territories and watching for potential threats. Her morning briefing included reports from dozens of patrol ships, trade vessels, and research stations scattered across human space. Most of it was routine, but there were some items that caught her attention. Commander, we've got multiple reports of automated systems activating without authorization, reported Major Taman from the Intelligence Division. Nothing dangerous, just old satellite networks and deep space monitoring stations coming online. Which systems? Yuna asked, pulling up a holographic map of human space. That's the strange part. They're all systems we thought were inactive. Some of them are satellites we put in orbit decades ago and then forgot about. Others are monitoring stations in the outer system that show up on old records, but nobody remembers building. Yuna studied the map. The activated systems formed a rough sphere around Earth and its closest colonies. Are they responding to our commands? No, ma'am. They acknowledge our signals but won't shut down or change their programming. They're not hostile, they're just active. Keep monitoring them and send a team to check the records. I want to know who built those stations we supposedly forgot about. On Luna, humanity's oldest off-world colony, engineer Sunho Kang was making his own disturbing discovery. He worked at the Luna Research Station, which studied everything from asteroid mining to deep space communication. His specialty was planetary geology, and he had spent years mapping the internal structure of planets throughout human space. Today, he was running routine scans of Earth when his equipment detected something impossible. The scans showed massive, artificial structures deep inside the planet far below the surface. Sunho ran the scans 3 more times, checking his equipment and adjusting the settings. Each time, the results were the same. There were artificial structures inside Earth, buried so deep that no human technology should be able to detect them, let alone build them. The structures were enormous, spanning continents underground. They appeared to be connected by a network that reached from Earth's core to just below the surface. Most disturbing of all, the structures were drawing power from Earth's magnetic field and core rotation. Sunho tried to make sense of what he was seeing. The structures were clearly artificial, but they showed signs of being millions of years old. Humans had only been building advanced technology for a few hundred years, and they had only been in space for less than a century. He sent his findings to Commander Choi immediately, along with a request for more powerful scanning equipment. If there really were ancient structures inside Earth, humanity needed to know what they were and who built them. Back at the Galactic Council Station, Ambassador Jiho Kim was attending his first cultural exchange event of the week. These gatherings were supposed to help different species understand each other better by sharing stories, traditions, and histories. Tonight's theme was creation myths and origin stories. Representatives from various species took turns telling the tales their people used to explain where they came from and how they fit into the universe. The stories were fascinating. Some species believed they were created by ancient gods who lived among the stars. Others had complex tales about evolving from simpler life forms through cosmic